Hello, good morning, and welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. My name is Paul Strangini. We got a lot of clouds today, so there may be some interruptions in the stream, but the whole thing gets captured, and even if it wasn't captured by YouTube, I can see here that I'm recording it as I do every day. We're in the Sermon on the Mount, in the Gospel of Matthew. Some of Jesus' most basic and important teachings. I think when you think of the teachings of Jesus, we think of things like in the Sermon on the Mount. And I find it interesting, I saw something where someone was saying ways in which the New Testament was corrupted by scribes. And, a lot of that is speculative. Some of it, it's questionable. There's just copying issues sometimes. But at some point it becomes impossible to do much to change it, because once you have several hundred copies, tracking down every single one, you need a conspiracy. So, well, little things can creep into the text. Most of it does not get changed. And I think this passage we're about to study is a case in point. If someone wanted to change the New Testament, I would think they would start right here. Right? You've heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil. But whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. Let's just get the rest of it. And if any man will sue thee at law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him that asketh thee, and from him that will borrow of thee, turn thou not away. Let's just continue with the rest of this here, because this is kind of part of a complete thought. You've heard that hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thy enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and the unjust. For if you love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same? Even the tax collectors love their family. And if you salute your brethren only, what do you more than others? Do not even the publicans so? Be therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. And we'll probably spend the whole time talking about all these verses. Be perfect. Most people, you start talking about sin, they'll say, I'm sorry, hold on here. They'll say, first thing people say, I'm not perfect. I'm not some holy person, right? That's loud. I'd say the same thing. I'm not perfect. I'm not some holy man, And I understand why we would say that, because it's true. We're not perfect. We aspire to perfection. And I take that in this vein. You've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Tit for tat, Someone pokes you in the eye, you poke them in the eye, Now in the Old Testament, that was meant to be sort of equal justice. Because, there is this sort of goes back to Cain. If any man slays me, he shall be, or Tubal Cain, was it Tubal Cain? Lamech. Lamech says, I slew a man who wounded me. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, then Lamech shall be avenged 7 times sevenfold, or 7 times 70-fold, I forget. But he sort of is like, if there's vengeance for slaying Cain, then for me it's even more. And there's sort of this thing like, you hurt me, I kill your family. You know, that sort of mentality exists among human beings. You cross me, I do away. I'm gonna just overwhelm you with the response. And so the Old Testament has this idea: hey, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. You know, not. And some people look at that now and they say like, oh, how barbaric. But it's a proverbial thing. It means let the punishment equal the crime. You know, if someone stole, they should restore what they stole, or something of equal value. If someone harms someone, well, the harm, something equivalent should be returned. Not, you know, so that's what eye for eye, tooth for tooth means. It means that the punishment should equal the crime. Of course, it's very easy to take quite literally, and it's also very easy to be like, okay, you know, tit for tat in everything. And Jesus is saying, no, resist not evil. Now that's a tall order. Someone comes into your home and starts to try to hurt your family, you're just going to let them do it? And, you know, I'm more of a, you know, try to get an advantage and stomp their heads in type of person. At least that's, I know exactly that's where my mind runs. You know, and so, but the thing is here, take it first. You know, he which is faithful in that which is least is also faithful in that which is greatest. You know, like, you don't necessarily start with the most difficult kind of temptation when trying to obey this, okay? A lot of times you say, oh, I'm not perfect. Okay, I know that you're not perfect. You know, so let's start with the easy things. Let's start with the little things. And this is kind of a reverse, because, you know, in the other commandments we talked about, you know, it's easier to avoid adultery than it is to avoid looking on a woman to lust after her. It's easier not to murder someone than it is to disrespect them or to demean them. And also, in this case, you know, when you talk about resisting not evil, it's easier to resist or to not resist a slight evil than a great evil. You know what I mean? So, if we're going to try to be righteous and follow the commandments of Jesus, we will start with that which is least. So you're in an argument and someone says something insulting to you. You don't have a right to return that insult. And I learned that a long time ago in my email discussions. In the early ones, you'll see I am insulting towards people at times. But even when I knew I was exercising restraint because there are things I wanted to say that I knew I shouldn't say, you know. And so, you know, start off small. Evil doesn't mean sin here. You know, resist not evil. It doesn't mean don't resist sin or sinful impulses. It means evil in the sense of bad things that could happen to you, or the evil intentions of men. So, and he gives it in terms of a smite on the right cheek. Now, in many societies, smiting someone on the cheek, a slap to the face, is a form of insult. It's a pretty strong insult. You know, if someone slaps you on the cheek, it's not only an insult, it's an assault. In our modern society, people generally insult you with words, you know. They start slapping you, especially if they're not a woman. It could lead to a fight. Women get away with more because, especially if they do it to a man, because of the nature of male-female relationships. Men sort of have this, we're not allowed to hit women, but they can hit us, you know? I mean, not legally or truly, but sort of culturally they can, and they do. Men get hit. Men are much more likely to get hit, actually. And they always talk about men beating up women, but actually women are just as likely to be violent. In fact, more so, because they have uh, there's not as many constraints on that behavior. If a man gets hit or beat up by a woman, it's a joke. If a woman gets hit or beat up by a man, it is a horrible tragedy. And I'm not saying that's right at all. It's just the way it is. So, but this is specifically here. Jesus gives us an insult. But I used to sort of, I think my original take on this was a slap on the cheek is not a punch in the face, you know. But then you think about Jesus, what he did when he went to the cross, suffered the death of the cross, allowed himself to be captured, and he had the power to stop it all. It was God's will. And he went through all that. And to know that it's given on you on the behalf of Christ to suffer. Certainly, if it's for Christ's sake, we may have to suffer. And it's easy to prepare your mind for that rather than to just have someone wantonly commit violence against you or attempt to rob you or such. And so all I'm saying is we should aspire to the highest level of righteousness. But the fact that we can't initially see our way through to the path to being as perfect as Jesus calls us to be, meaning, you know, when we say, well, Paul, why should I let someone just do something evil to me? Because you have faith in God and know that he is your protector and defender, and he will avenge you, etc. And that someone who touches you is getting themselves into more hot water than they could possibly know. And that bad things are on the way for them. Knowing that, it should be sufficient in our faith. Now, you know, like I said, so if someone breaks into my house, I'm going to try to kill them. You know, I don't know, especially if they seem like, you know, if it's one thing if some drunk guy just staggers into your house, I'm going to try to kill him. But I'm just saying, depending on the intentions, depending on the fear level, my response will be with overwhelming force. I just know that's me, you know, but I'm not saying it's right. You know, a truly faithful man could deal with the situation without being so violent. Let's start off with your insults. You know, let's say, especially if you're teaching or preaching the gospel and acting in the name of Jesus. If you say to somebody, hey, you know, this is the gospel, the Lord Jesus, you should believe in him and whatever, and then they say, wow, what a bunch of crap, or they say, you know, only stupid people believe in God and follow the teachings of Jesus, or you believe in that antiquated garbage, you know, something, whatever. They throw some sort of insult. Like, I don't know how anyone who wasn't colossally stupid could follow that, except they were brought up in it. You know, they'll say things like that. It's like, I remember, because I remember an atheist making that argument. It's like, if you weren't brought up in this, there's no way anyone would ever believe in this. It's like, well, I'm like, well, I could name several people who were atheists who converted to Christianity. So you know, and nobody would believe it except it was foisted on them as a child. I can't argue on my own behalf because it was put on me as a child, but it wasn't certainly wasn't forced down my throat. I wasn't force-fed Christianity. I just kind of, like I always say, it was just kind of laid out. It was the buffet I walked up to and took a hold of. It was just in my home. You know, I certainly wasn't encouraged. I wasn't like particularly like, oh, Paul, go into the ministry, or this isn't the ministry. This is just my ministry, because this is not how I earn my living. It never has been. Though, whatever. Resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on the right cheek, turn him the other also. You're offering, you hit on one cheek, let him hit the other. Instead of offering yourself for abuse. Like I said, certainly in the context of insults, this makes sense. If someone wants to abuse you, certainly I think verbally. If we're talking verbally, you know, grow some skin. and allow people to say nasty things. I mean, that's the most easy part of this. And like I said, he that is faithful in that which is least. If you can get used to allowing people to say nasty things and keeping your cool and speaking the truth in love, genuine love, not this passive aggressive garbage I hear from people. I hear Christians sometimes, they'll sort of say like, they'll insult you, and then you're like, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, I'll pray for you because you're blind, and blah, blah, blah. And they heap on this sort of like passive-aggressive like stuff. Like if someone's blind, that's knowledge for you. He's blind. You can't help it. But saying like, well, you're blind and you can't help it, that's another insult. You're not turning the other cheek. You're subtly hitting them with the back of your hand. You know what I mean? You're not really being obedient. Passive aggression is one of the most insidious forms of this that I see among, they'll basically sort of pretend to be walking away from the situation or walking back or being all, I'm going to turn the other cheek here, It's just like when people say, like, well, I'm going to shake the dust off my feet at you. It's like, you didn't have to say that. Because, again, that's another form of, if they think some evil is being done to them, they are reaching out and trying to hurt. I get this all the time because people don't like what I say about Arnold Murray. Or what I have said. And so I get very, letters that are trying to, like, for everything from, I get comments on YouTube on my other page where people will try to insult my singing, which doesn't affect me because I've never had a high opinion of it. I've always considered it an acquired taste, I'm not some crooner whose voice makes people, lulls them to sleep. It's not even my purpose, and I know I can't hit the right notes all the time because I just don't have that. I'm not gifted in singing, and I don't have a gifted voice. I think I have a good expression when I sing, but it's not a pleasing sound. So anyway, but what I'm saying, the reason I'm saying that and even commenting about it is just because I don't care. And then they'll say stuff like, "Oh, I listen to your teaching." They'll go through all the trouble writing me an email and say, "I listen to your teaching, but I didn't get much out of it," Or there's one person that's like, I was listening to you, but then all of a sudden I heard you mention Arnold Murray. I went to him. He's so much better than you. And so I'm switching over to him. And and then it cracking me up. It's like, I don't care. I don't know if I don't even really believe you because I think you're just trying to hurt me. That's what happens when people try to hurt me, when I can tell they're trying to make me feel bad. It just kind of makes me smile. Because it's childish. Oh, someone's leaving. I don't care. My wife left. I would care about that. She's not going anywhere. I wouldn't let her. Not that she wants to, but I just a little bit. But I don't. This nasty, insulting person who's writing me a message. I don't care if you leave. It's no skin off my back. I only need one person to continue teaching. That's the deal I made with the Lord a long time ago. When I first started teaching, I said, Lord, I'll keep doing Bible studies and teaching as long as there's at least one person who wants to listen. That's the deal I made. I made a deal for a congregation of one, which he immediately provided in my wife, who always watches and listens to everything I do. So I don't really need anybody else to keep going. I already got my one. I never aspired to big ministry type things, and this is not a big ministry. And I know that for certain because I get like one supporter. Well, and there are family members also who are supportive, like two. So I'm thankful for the little support I do get, but I don't need support of jerks and people who insult and stuff. I said, go. So we go through life and encounter people, we need to be kind and not and let insults roll off your back, or glance off you. Let the insults go. Don't get angry at them when they insult you. I know it's hard. It's harder when they insult like someone you love, something like that. They start picking on them, but still. And he goes, if any man will sue you at law to take away your coat, let him have thy cloak also. Give him extra. Say, you want my coat? Here, have my cloak too. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with them twain. Now, in the Roman times, a Roman soldier could compel a person, any person they found, I assume who was not a citizen, to carry their gear for a mile. And you're walking and say, here, carry my stuff. And that person was required. And it's a soldier, you know. So he's armed and stuff. Carry his gear for a mile. And obviously that would create a lot of resentment. I was on my way to town. I said, well, carry my gear. I'm on my way to the war. Carry my gear. And they would carry him for a mile. It's significant, significant carry. It could be a heavy pack, for a mile. But the Romans figured that, hey, that's reasonable, It's inconvenient, but it's not a mile. What's it going to take? A half hour? We got important business to do here. I don't know why I'm taking on like a Italian accent, mafia. But anyways, but that's the point. They and what he's saying is like, hey, go with them twice. Go 2 miles. And we have, of course, in English, we have the saying, go the extra mile. This is where it comes from. Jesus invented that. Go the extra mile. Where's that come from? It's funny. It took me years. I didn't actually connect the two. I always knew about the go the extra mile. At so-and-so Motors, we go the extra mile. It means to do that extra bit of service. And obviously the point here is to win people over. It's better to make friends than enemies. You know what I mean? You walk with them an extra mile, and all of a sudden, at first they're like, I compel you, take it a mile. And you take it a mile, and then you say, I'll go with you, I'll take it a second mile, so you don't have to find somebody else. And now their attitude towards you entirely changes. Because you're not being forced to do this. And even if you're smiling as you're doing it for the first mile, it could be false. They know that. When someone's doing something by obligation, they may wisely act as though, oh yeah, sure, I'll carry your pack for a mile, rather than being like, yeah, and sort of letting people know how much you resent being forced to do something against your will. Sometimes it's not such a good idea to show your resentment, but once you go that extra mile, or once you start it even, especially when you're doing it voluntarily, they immediately know you're just doing it voluntarily. And why would you do that? Well, Jesus said so. Why would you do that? Why would you do the extra thing? Why would you stop and help? And if you've ever stopped and gone out of your way to help someone, they almost inevitably are like, why are you helping me? Or they would say, like, sometimes they get incredulous. They sort of like don't understand. It's funny to me because, I don't know, it seems like the natural thing to do is you see someone in trouble, you help them, right? At least, I don't know. May have been walking in this for so long that I just, that's my instinct. I think it was part of the way I was raised too, but it's a Christian thing to do, And I think there's some coldness that has fallen over our society, but I think in general, that's how our society is. Though I remember my wife telling me once a story where we had a neighbor, and his car broke down. Oh, a good 2 miles from our house, around the bend, and he was just a couple hundred feet from another neighbor's house, who's now passed away. And it was a snowstorm. It was in this cold, snowy. And this guy is not, who had his car breakdown, he's not in super duper health either. Overweight and some health issues. So he walks over to the neighbor's house, and the neighbor won't open the door to him. And not only that, when I heard about this later, the guy who was in trouble told me about how he had earlier, like a week or days, he had encountered that guy, broken down on the side of the road, and stopped to help him with his son. I mean, the guy who the guy who broke down in the snowstorm stopped to help the neighbor guy. They're both neighbors, but the unhelpful person stopped to help him, and the breakdown guy was with his son. The unhelpful person was not. And the unhelpful person, when he was being helped, was ungrateful. And in fact, rude and kind of like, hurry up and blah, 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 blah. I remember I had the same attitude about him, that he was kind of we have words for those type of people. And I can't think of any of the descriptive terms that are not inappropriate. He was a son of a bucket, let's say. That's what my dad used to say. He was a bit of a son of a bucket. Yes, that doesn't work. That's just a replacement. Same thing. I don't know what. It was just that way. And yeah, that's just as inappropriate. Okay. I don't know. I'm like, what did we have a? Did we have a? It doesn't matter. I'm not. It's not meant to be an insult. He'd probably say, "Yeah, you bet your sweet bippy I'm a SOB." That's me. Well, he turned him away from his house. Then he had to walk 2 miles over to my house before he found someone willing to let him in. I wasn't home. My wife, let him in, let him warm up, and let him call his family. Jeez. And I just don't, to me it seems like especially the guy. It's a snowstorm where someone, some criminal, especially out in the country. I mean, like, you don't have people wandering in. People don't wander in. They if they don't have a car, they're in trouble. It's almost like the desert out here. I mean, really. I mean, in some ways worse, because you can't make a straight line for anything. If your home's over there, you still got to go around everything. It's all it's all square blocked out. All right. So go the extra mile. Someone's in trouble, help them out. If someone compels you to go a mile. This isn't even just like being nice but the Jesus standard is much higher than just, hey, when it's in your power to do good to someone, do it. That's easy enough. When it doesn't cost you anything. That's the thing that gets me, is that we've come to a place where a lot of times people won't do good, even though it costs them nothing. I mean, that's so abhorrent. But that's the least level of righteousness, right? It costs you nothing. Do the good thing. If you can be faithful to do good to people when it costs you nothing, then we can move towards doing it when it costs a lot. If we're faithful in the small things, we can become faithful in the large things. If we aren't faithful in the little things, there's no way. It's like, that's why people always say, that goes to the things like people who say, like, well, when the tribulation comes, I'm going to straighten out my act. Yeah, that's when I'm going to start really following Jesus. Right now, I'm just going to party hardy, live kind of debauched lifestyle, but I believe in Jesus and the tribulation and all that. And when it starts, I'm gonna sober up that morning and get my act in gear. It's like if you've run with the horsemen and footmen and they have wearied you, how will you contend with horses? If you are not faithful in the time of peace, how are you going to be faithful in the time of war? If you have not, been faithful in that which is least, if in the little things, in the small things, the things that were easy, you could not follow Christ, you're not going to be able to do it when it comes to the big thing, when it comes to the big temptations. So you start by resisting small temptations, and then move on to the greater temptations. And like I said, it's like, and it doesn't necessarily mean sin. Sometimes great sins are easy to avoid, but because the temptation is small. I mean, but when it comes to temptation, it's the least temptations, the things that are least tempting that we do anyways. Start off with the things that are easiest to resist. It's easier to go the extra mile than to let someone just punch you in the stomach. Give to him the asketh thee, and from him that would borrow thee, turn not away. Gosh, it's hard for me because I don't trust people. It's like, yeah, well, they're not trustworthy. They may not return what you lend them. But Jesus says, lend it anyways. Don't be so worried about your possessions, because and especially when it's hard when you are poor and your possessions mean a lot. I mean, like I got let's say I got like a single vehicle. It's the only one I got and I need it, and someone wants to borrow it and I don't think they're a good driver. I mean, it's very much like, I don't want to lend you my vehicle, But, you could offer, I'll drive you, Like I said, start off small. And like I said, when I said this section, why would people want to change it? Well, whosoever, resist not evil without a cause. You know what I mean? Without a cause. Or with a cause. Resist not evil when it's, when it's something small or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could add in stuff to negate the power of what Jesus is saying. Trust God to look after you. God is looking after you. You don't need to be so worried about your possessions. So covetous of your time and precious, moments. I don't want to carry this guy's stuff for a mile. I've got things to do, and it's very easy to get caught up in that. And sometimes it's hard to tell which way, because it's like, I owe this time to somebody else, and I can give of what's mine. Right? Remember this, that it's not right to rob someone else to give to somebody else. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's like, if I'm in the employ of someone, right? If I'm on the clock, it's like it limits the way I can. I mean, someone owns that time from me. They bought it. Or they're promising to buy it anyways, right? And so how I use that time is limited. I'm not allowed. I shouldn't rob my employer to try to please somebody else. Let's pause a second. Subscribe to Line by Line Bible Studies. Click on the subscription button. Click on the little bell. The little bell will give you notifications of when the stream is live, though that is every day at 7. The other day I did a bonus stream afterwards. So if you had clicked on the little bell, you would have been notified. And oh well, there's another stream. I've got some other things I want to cover on other bonus streams, but not today. There are more study songs and writings, doctrinal and philosophical and whatever you want to say in terms of Christianity. You can find all my stuff on oraclesofgod.org, except for this stream, which is only on YouTube right now. Oh, and also the stuff on my YouTube page, a lot of that you can only get on YouTube also. So, yeah, and oraclesofgod.org did not go black the other day. I successfully got everything transferred over. I've still got to remember to finish my email setup. So, and the reason I mention that, because if you have a question, you can send your questions at oraclesofgod.org. And that email address is for questions about the stream. Like, and I mean about, like, if you have a question about this study, you could send it there. Though, if it's during the study you have the question, you can put it into the chat, that's on the side of the live stream. And you know, that kind of looks like this. Like this little box on the right of your screen. And I had a little comment there myself. So if you had a question about the study today, you could put your question there. Someone sent a question through a comment, and I will answer those, but I just say to you right off the bat, that may not be the best way to get a question to me, because it's just I like to read comments people leave, but you know, YouTube doesn't always notify you. It's like hit or miss. So, you know, like so-and-so left a comment, great, you know, but then sometimes, especially as there get to be more comments, they don't get left. So the most surefire way for me to eventually see what you're trying to tell me is to send it to that email address, questions@oraclesofgod.org. Like I said, you can send me a question also, that's like, or like a suggestion for a topical study. It's like, I'd really like to hear you talk about, what was something I was thinking about the other day? Well, one of the studies I want to do is one called Silver and Gold. And another one is, what was I thinking about the other day? Well, Hellfire. Didn't have that in mind right now, but that's not the one I was thinking of. Okay. If any man will sue you at law, take away your coat, you know. So agree with your adversary, pay him off. Pay him off generously. Give him the shirt off your back. You know? He'd give you the shirt off his back. It's related to this somehow. There's only, as far as I know, Jesus is the one who was the one who brought these ideas out. Give to him that asketh thee, from him that would borrow of you, turn not away. That's difficult, because, right? Because, loan me some money. You know, I don't want to contradict the Lord Jesus, and I'm not going to, but, you know, I understand. Like, if someone, you know, they're just borrowing money to go buy drugs. Well, if you know that, then look out for their best interest. You know, sometimes you gotta do things that are unpleasant to people, meaning they don't please them. I'm saying everything use wisdom to not. It's one thing if someone needs money for something good, like I need to. My car's been impounded. It has all my tools for work in it. I gotta get to work on Monday. And I'm broke. My next paycheck is, or I just started maybe. You know, I just got this new job, and then my car was in blah blah blah, you know, whatever. There's always some sort of story. There's always times when you should help people in need, of course. But then there's the guy you know him, and you know he's got a drug problem, and you know, don't enable someone else to destroy themselves. Love is what does good and not what feels good. You know what I mean? Meaning, it's not our duty as Christians to make other people feel good, but to do good to them. And that's important. You know what I mean? So, let that override any other consideration. That, am I doing them good? You know what I mean? So, yes, lend when it will do good. Give when it will do good. But if you don't use this, what I'm saying, as an excuse to avoid doing good. You know what I mean? Don't be like, well, I think they're just going to waste it, so I don't think so. You know what I mean? It's like, don't be like that. But if you know it could do more harm than good, then of course, don't do it. Use wisdom in all things. I mean, that's what the Lord expects of us. When he writes these things, he expects us to look at them with eyes wide open and read and understand and apply them in a way that is wise and that does good and not evil. You've heard that it hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thy enemy. You know, that's not in the Bible. Like, it's not part of the law. Like, love your enemy. I mean, love your neighbor, hate your enemy. It doesn't really say that. Even in the Old Testament, the idea of loving your enemy or bless your enemies, doing good, for in so doing you will heap coals of fire on their head. Let's just find that place real quick. Coals of fire. I know in the New Testament Jesus says it. For Bible searches, I use a piece of software called Bible Collection. I picked it up. It's been around a while. It's probably Proverbs, actually. Ah, yes. Proverbs 25:22. Well, it goes back to 25:21. If thine enemy be hungry, give him bread to eat, and if he be thirsty, give him water to drink. For thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head, and the Lord shall reward thee. Meaning the Lord has always approved of us doing good to those who are our enemies. And also, you know, when it says coals of fire, obviously it's metaphorical. It's not literally. You're not literally. And that's the thing, is like, you know, here's the thing. Sometimes I confess, I take a bit of perverse pleasure at times in being really good to people who are really nasty to me. And being generous with my words and being kind with them. Actually, Paul quotes this in Romans 12 and talks about the coals of fire. Jesus never mentions the coals of fire, but the scriptures do. So I mean, the thing is, when you love your enemies and bless the people who curse you, and do good to them that hate you, it can sort of enrage them, especially those which despitefully use you. Despitefully use you and persecute you. Persecution is they pursue you. You know, it's something people say, I'm being persecuted. Persecution is when people are actively pursuing you, trying to get you. They're out to get you. They want to destroy you. Either get you imprisoned or hound you out of the, you know, whatever group you may be part of. You know, chase you out of town, so to speak. Run you out of town on a rail. That's persecution. Someone just being like, well, you know, someone talking evil behind your back is, I guess that could be, you know, someone's on an active campaign to destroy your reputation. That's a form of persecution, especially when it's like an intentional campaign to go after you, either physically or socially, is persecution. And obviously, each one is, you know, social persecution is obviously lesser than real persecution, than persecution in the outward world, where they're like, you know, sending things after you. Love your enemies. You know, don't. The thing is, you know, love and hate. You know, people don't like hate. It's like a bad word. They don't even like hate speech. You know, they want to ban hate speech. And that's a slippery slope if you ever heard one, because who defines what hate is? Hate, and I said hate speech is anything you say that they hate. You know what I mean? They're the ones who determine who gets to say what. So hate speech is a very bad idea, to like try to go against that. And the thing is, and hate is a part of life. Love breeds hate. Why is it that when, if I talk to a parent like about how would you feel about someone who would kidnap and molest and torture and kill your child? How do you feel about that person? You love them? If you answer quickly, oh yes, you're not being honest with yourself, or you have no feelings. You don't have natural feelings. Natural feeling is hate. And if you want to depersonalize it, how do you feel about cancer claiming them? Do you love cancer? Well, it's easy to say, well, no, I hate cancer. It killed my brother. It killed my father. It killed this person, that person. So we know that the hatred of evil things is right. It is right. I mean, in the book of Hebrews, chapter 2 or 1. I think it's actually the end of chapter 1. Yeah, chapter 1, verse 9. Thou hast loved righteousness and hated iniquity. Therefore God, even thy God, hath anointed thee with the oil of gladness above thy fellows. The Psalms. I think it's Psalm 11. The Lord... Verse 5, the Lord trieth the righteous, but the wicked and him that loveth violence, his soul hateth. And of course, the famous, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. So what is this? Then why does Jesus, if God hates, then why is he saying, be perfect like your Father? Be perfect as your Father is perfect. Don't hate your enemies. But doesn't God hate those that love violence and those who are wicked? Doesn't he hate them? I mean, doesn't all of Christianity, or most of it, teach that God will torture forever those who are his enemies? Oh, but he loves them. Really? Yes, he's just forced to do that. By whom? Who forces God to do such things? Is he not the one who determines everything? Are you saying that there's some objective righteousness that God himself bows to? That he bends his actions to some higher authority? I reject that idea. God is the ultimate arbiter and judge of what is right and wrong. And everything that exists, every standard that exists, every righteous and unrighteous thing is so because he declared it so, because he made it to be so. If something is sinful, it's because God says so. If something is wrong, it's because God says it's wrong. If something is required, it is because God requires it. You know what I mean? He is the author of all reality in the world. He does not exist within some other ultimate reality that he bows to. Then that thing is God, not God. Not what we call God, not the personal God we worship, that we bow to. There's some greater ultimate universal standards which God has to bow to. I mean, maybe people believe in a God like that, then it's lesser gods. It's more like the Greek gods or something. I don't know. That's why I say it's like, well, no. If God's throwing people in hell, he wants to throw them there, and he has decided that it is good to throw them there, and then that's what he wants to do. It is not something, it's something he decides he must do based on standards that he himself has consciously erected. Not based on like, well, it's just, I can't do nothing about it, it's just gotta be. No, that's unacceptable. That's not an acceptable answer. God, whatever his nature is, it is his doing. He is the author of himself, as far as like whatever he has decided is something that he is responsible for. The buck stops here. You know what I mean, with God, the buck stops because you can't pass on the responsibility to somebody else. It's also disrespectful to God in that sense, because you're saying like, oh God, you're not responsible for that. Don't worry about it. Love your enemies, and that's what this is about. So if God, you know, and I don't believe God throws them into eternal torture. I believe he kills them, which is sufficiently hateful for the point. You know, it's not. What I'm saying is, I talk about God hating, and then people say, no, God loves everybody, and then they talk about hell. I'm like, you know, I understand people who believe in universal reconciliation. There are plenty of those. They're not a majority, but they say that God loves everybody, and and hell is just a reformation or whatever. And I don't agree with them, but I say, well, it's a consistent point. You got a consistent point of view. I don't think it stands up very well, and I don't think it's very philosophically attractive, because it renders the things we do less significant. Like it's sort of like this is just all a play being put on, that this is not, I mean, they'll say, oh no, it's serious because it has repercussions. No, but ultimately the you know, we're all wearing the helmets, you know, we can't, we're no matter what we do, no matter how stupid we are, eventually it's going to get worked out. We can't destroy ourselves. Throw yourself off the temple, because everyone's going to get reconciled to God in the end anyways. Who cares? You know? Oh, well, you shouldn't tempt God. That could lead to what? What? Detention? That's essentially what it leads to. It's like, oh, you go to detention. I'm so scared. Show up to class on time. I mean, that was my attitude. You're supposed to be on time to class, whatever. So that's like when I got to college. It's like, well, here's the classes. Well, I don't want to go. Nobody's gonna, and I realized nobody's gonna stop me. You know, in school, you skip class. I remember I discovered you could be tardy a few times, and then you get a detention. But if you show up really late, it's a different category, and you get 3 of those. And then if you just totally skip class, you get a limited. You know what I mean? Like you could. So I'm like, oh, I'm not tardy. I just totally ditched class. It's first time, so there's no penalty. It's like a warning. Paul missed class. Ooh, I'm scared. Yeah, I mean, and that's what you reduce God to when you say universal reconciliation, because he hates nothing and no one. It's just all kind of like, well, you know, you kids are kind of out of control, and we're gonna put you in detention for a while and straighten you out. That doesn't work. Oh, Will, it's like, really? Okay. Because a lot of times universal reconciliation, they do believe in sort of torture. We're going to torture you into behaving the right way, and then it's starting to be a real scary eternity, if you ask me. In my view, whether they'll say, oh, well, it's not physical, it's mental, whatever. That's some of the worst torture of all. You know, take my body, leave my mind alone. You know what I mean? If I could have no headache and have my mind at peace, I could take a lot of pain. It was some. I broke my foot. That was pretty painful, and I thought there was a new 10 in pain for me, and I thought it was pretty bad. But whatever. But we're gonna just torture them mentally until they reform their behavior. I don't know. That doesn't sound too nice to me. So I don't buy this. There's no hatred in these things. I mean, I do think universal reconciliation, they got some crazy love, but it's some consistent view of love, you know. But the rest of Christianity, oh come on, God hates. That's what hell is all about. Teaching of hell is all about hatred, nothing but. Well, Paul, what's that got to do with this? Well, because it's like, love your neighbor, hate, there are things, hatred can be misplaced. That's the thing. You know, they say love the sinner, hate the sin. That's so cliche, but it's kind of like that. You know, we hate iniquity. And God hates those that do violence and those that work iniquity. But we ought to be more reserved because we are not God. And I've used this example already in this teaching before, but like the Apostle Paul. He was the enemy of the church. He was the enemy of Christians. He was going out and hunting them down and casting them into prison. But hatred for him. Like, for example, when Paul was brought to, oh boy, I can't remember his name. In the book of Acts, Paul is struck blind and he's told to go, is it Damascus? I don't remember if he was on the road to Damascus. I don't remember if he goes to Damascus, but whatever, he goes someplace and he meets someone who's a Christian who says, who greets him and tells him to receive his sight and all that. But that person, you know, and like it says of Paul, like he who once persecuted us is now preaching the faith. You know, the initial feeling could be one of bitterness against him, for all the things he'd done. It's like, you know, you threw my mother in prison, you know, you threw my father, my sister, my brother in prison. You hunted them down, and do you know that what they happened to them there? They were killed. Paul never claimed to actually. He never put anyone to death himself, but he delivered them to be punished, certainly, or to be re-educated, whatever, you know. And then he changes his mind. Oh, wonderful, you know. It'd be easy to cling to bitterness against someone. In fact, I've seen that when someone betrays you and is unkind and unrepentant, it is very easy and normal to feel hatred towards them. But Jesus is saying this is misplaced. And like I said, there are times when it's easy to love your enemies. Like when they're repenting, right? When they're sorry. To continue to love them. And you know, and this isn't love in the sense of feeling love for them, but this is a love of action. Bless them, pray for them, do good to them. Right? We want to do good to our enemies because the best way to overcome them is to, you know, do not be overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good is another thing Jesus taught. We want to overcome evil with good. We want to overcome our enemies not with violence and that kind of earthly power, slaughter. You know, we could kill them. That'd be one way to take care of them, right? God has already said He's going to kill all our enemies. They are dead. Their deaths are coming, unless they repent. And so, rather than having a mindset of like, let all my enemies be slain, we should have the mindset like that we were the enemies of God. Especially us, because we're, you know, I mean, I'm a Gentile. I've been accused of being a Jew, but I almost want to get a genetic test just to prove it. This is a Roman nose and it's been broken, not a Jewish one. You know. I don't know. So it's a little crooked. But from getting punched in the face. I'm not Jewish. I was the enemy of God, without God, in the world. This my ancestors were. I had no claim to the promises of God in the Old Testament, the covenant which He made with Israel. But in His mercy, He opened up a way for us to enter into His kingdom through Jesus. He was merciful to us, who were His enemies. And therefore, we ought to be merciful to others, especially our enemies, and love them. At least, you know, you may not feel love for someone who's your enemy, and I don't think it's required of us to feel affection. You know what I mean? This love there's different kinds of love, and there's love of benevolence, having a benevolent attitude. And what I say, remember what I said, love is what does good, not what feels good. It is not your obligation to make your enemies feel good necessarily. And by that I mean saying the words they want to hear, I have people in my life, or a person you could say, who is a close family member, who has been traitorous and so on and so forth in the family, turned their back on us, etc. And they feel that I hate them. But I don't hate them. The word to me, hatred would be to be like, hey, hey, it's fine. Just pretend like everything's fine, and just let it all go. Because the reason is they are completely unrepentant. They continue to justify their actions that were evil, and continue to do evil and speak evil. And as they continue in that, what is it? How do you love someone who continues in those things? Do you just say, oh, come into my home, I love you, and just say nothing as they continue to do evil? Is that what love looks like? It's a serious question, because, people, that's what, to them, that person says, that's what love is. That's what I want. I want, give me a hug. Oh, and don't say anything about those things. The things I've done and continue to do, and that I'm not repentant of. I have no remorse. I did I did what should be done. I don't regret it a bit. And that which I'm doing now, and now I'm living as a fornicator, openly. I have more hatred for family members that I don't say anything about. That I don't hold their feet. It's like, what, again? It's like, was this your 10th boyfriend? Thou hast had 5 husbands, and he that thou hast not is not your husband. Those were the words Jesus said to a fornicator. And what would it feel like? She took it well, but I'm just saying, but some people in the family might be like, well, that's so hateful. Why are you even mentioning it? Just, Affection is not the same as love. Love is what does good, not what feels good. That's my definition. But I think that's right. Love does good. It may feel good. You know what I mean? Having someone bless you might feel good. Bless them. Well, how do you bless them? I mean, you can say, bless you. As you fornicate and adulterate, be blessed. I bless you in fornication and wickedness. I bless you as you murder, kill, steal. Is that what it means? Of course not. No, it does not mean that. They curse you, bless them. Meaning, again, they want evil for you. You want good for them. They may not agree about what's good, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, for someone, no, good is that I have all the drugs I want, and I can fornicate as often as I please, and I can do all the things I want. That's what good is. I can follow my hedonistic pleasures. That's my idea of good. And so, is that how you bless them? It's like, well, have drugs, have sex, have all the pleasures and wicked things you desire. Kill, steal, go forth, multiply, be blessed. Is that what Jesus is calling us to do? I think not. I think not. So, in these things, sometimes you gotta take it to the extreme. Like, say, if I take this totally literally and I take it to the extreme, where does it lead me? And say, okay, well, he couldn't have meant that. You know what I'm saying? But that is just how people behave, actually. They think like, well, I'm going to do good to those, so let's not say anything because it might offend them. I don't want to offend them. And then, you got to be careful about giving offense. We don't want to give offense. It's tricky. that's why I say it's like, people will say like, that's the thing that gets me is that people will spend time, they'll want to, like I said, I did that study on the angels that sinned, right? I did that Monday this week, but whatever. In the future, anyone listening to this is going to seem dated. Whatever. It was called, did the angels come down and have mate with women? I think that's what it was called, because that was a question. Did the angels come down and mate with women? We could talk about that. In a half hour, I summed up the whole subject. There's nothing more to talk about. When do I get done with this? I could go on for another hour talking about this. That's what annoys me. It's like simple salvation. It's so boring. It's like the teachings of Jesus. There's no bottom. You can keep going and going and going and going. The other stuff like the angels, did they do this? What happened? You can get to the bottom of that pretty quick and be like, well, that's all we could say. I mean, I could have gone even deeper into it as far as like delving into like what this would mean theologically. Like why would God allow such a thing? We could go into those questions. But they minister questions which do not profit us, even if we get the answer. And there's no way we would know we had the answer. You know what I'm saying? But we can study these things and we can get definitive answers that mean something to us. Or at least we can get a general idea of how we ought to behave. Much more important. You want to enter into the kingdom of God, you want to walk in heaven, you got to understand these things. That's why this is what I teach, because these are the important doctrines of Christianity. You got to figure this out. I've been studying it for 20 years. I haven't totally figured it out. You know what I mean? It's about being children of your Father which is in heaven. Love your enemies. Pray for them which use you. They use you for their profit. Be a bigger prophet. You know what I mean? That's despitefully use you. They compel you to go a mile. Go with them too. They want to take your coat. Give them your cloak too. Give them everything. Let them go take it and burn. I mean, that in your heart, you can take that with you a little bit if it helps. Because my kindness may cause their repentance. But also, like I said, don't be so kind. I would not want to do something to someone to intentionally cause them to burn. You know what I mean? Meaning doing the kind of outward good things, like invite them to your parties, but you're not inspiring them to good behavior, but rather confirming them in evil. And I guess, I don't know, maybe maybe this is getting too personal for me on a level, because sometimes it's hard to tell what to do with people. Especially when it'd be one thing if they're strangers, it'd be easy. I don't have to, I dealt with them that one time and it's over. Then when it's someone who like keeps trying to come into your life, you have to have another sort of attitude. I mean, because that you may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. He makes his sun to rise on the evil and on the good. I'm out of time. It's 10 minutes after. And I could go on. My studies could go on forever. And I kind of want to go on. Because loving them which love you, that's what I mean. It's like when it's your loved one, it's almost different. When it's a family member. Because, of course, everyone does good to their family. It's like, in a sense, I almost feel like sometimes, look at the way Jesus was with his family. You know what I mean? Your mother and your sisters and your mother and your brethren are outside. They want to talk to you. And Jesus' response was, who are my mother and my brother? Behold, my mother, my brother, my sister. He pointed to his disciples and said, these are my family. What family? Sometimes it's important to treat your enemies like family and your family like enemies. Because they need to see where they stand. Your enemies, you're trying to say, like, you don't have to be my enemy. You could be my friend. Your family member, Their natural position is they're your family. That's what people always say, well, you can't do that. That's your family. It's like, I can't? No. Brother shall betray the brother to death, and the father the son, and children shall rise up against their parents. Family members can be the most dangerous people in your life. They can betray you. You trust them. They can turn on you. They can be enemies as easily as anybody. I'm not saying you should treat everyone like an enemy, but it's like when people are exceptionally harmful and odious, it does not pay to keep them close. Well, we're going to have to continue with this tomorrow. With the That Much Love You, the Sun. We'll probably pick up at about 45. Yeah, this has been a long time. I thought we'd get through all these verses. But we'll probably get into chapter 6 tomorrow. And we have been sort of covering this, but it's like I feel like we probably get through these last few verses pretty quickly in the first 15 minutes probably tomorrow. Anyways, for more studies, songs, and more, etc., go to oraclesofgod.org, my website. Now up and running for another 2 years. And of course, or is it 3? I think it's 36 months. Whatever. Subscribe to Line by Line Bible Studies. Because it's good for you and because whatever. I don't know. Because that's what I'm supposed to say. I'm supposed to tell you to subscribe. Thank you for subscribing. Because I guess it matters. And also I have another YouTube page. That's actually linked now in the description below. So if you want to pop over there and subscribe to that one too. Why not? Because I don't post very often on that one. And so it's good to be subscribed. When I do, especially if you want to see when I do a new song. Because that's primarily what's going up there now. Anyways. There we go. Let's just go full screen. Boom. Anyways. This has been Line by Line Bible Studies and the Tongue Twister. My name is Paul Strangini. Thank you for joining me in this study. I look forward to studying with you again tomorrow.